Objection! That was a nice bit of deduction. Trite. Well, everyone, this is the man Maya saw on the night of the murder. Order, order. Prosecutor Godot, what is the meaning of this? Surely you must be in shock to hear yourself accused of such a thing. Why aren't you denying it? Your Honor, you're asking the wrong person. What do you mean by that? If you got a question, ask the witness. That's one of my rules. Well, Maya, how about it? What you saw last night? Was it 3 glowing red lights? Well, witness, answer the question. You're wrong. I never saw that. Maya, I thought the person that stabbed my mother was a man. For a totally different reason. What? Because his dick was hanging out. No, I'm just kidding. Stop your chattering, Your Honor. Chattering? If it's worth asking, ask the witness. That's one of my rules. All right. Well then, let's continue with the testimony. Please tell us how you knew the killer was a man. Yes, Your Honor. I didn't realize it until after I woke up, but... When I came to, I was just lying there on the training hall floor. By the time I got back to the garden, the place had totally changed. The torches were lit, and the body was gone. And all of the snow around the stone lantern had been carefully cleaned up. Since the person did all that work alone, I just assumed it was a man. Bullshit! So it was after the crime took place that the witness came to think the killer was a man. Yes, that's right. I'm sorry, Your Honor. No need to apologize. It's as Mr. Godot says, you're utterly exhausted. It's only natural that you would be a little confused. Also, if you consider the situation you described, it doesn't seem too much of a stretch to assume the culprit was a man. Mr. Wright, proceed with your cross-examinations. Oh, Maya, why do you have to make this hard for us? So you lost consciousness when you were in the garden, is that right? Yes, I think it happened when the victim was stabbed. So the person that carried you into the inner temple could only have been the killer. That's what I think too. So the killer carried Maya into the inner temple. Naturally, the killer must have done it, right? Yes, I think so. But why would the killer tamper with the crime scene like that? There must have been something that the killer desperately wanted to hide. I don't know. Looks like she doesn't have enough confidence. I think I need to gather some more information before I ask her again. The torches were lit? Yes, that's how I noticed that the whole scene had changed. I'm gonna say it was the killer who lit the torches. I mean, who else could it be? The killer probably lit them since it'd be impossible to do any cover-up work in the dark. However, if that's true, then there's one thing that still bothers me. Why did the killer go to the effort of moving the body? That's true. It's hard to see how that would be of any advantage to the killer. The only one who would have gained anything from that would be the one person that was at the inner temple, Maya. Very well. Let's hear some more of the conditions of the crime scene. Oh, the snow. So you're saying the killer cleaned up the snow? It did look really odd. The snow was removed in a natural-looking rectangular shape around the lantern. There was a lot of snow shovels around the inner temple, but they're all really heavy. Way too heavy for me to use. An odd fellow indeed, this killer. Why on earth would anyone want to take snow away? Well, there's one thing I can think of. Didn't you say that a lot of the victim's blood sprayed into the snow? Yeah. The area that collapsed ended up being splattered. In other words, the killer's purpose was to hide the bloody snow. I think that's the most reasonable explanation. Perhaps. However, there's something that's bothering me. If the killer just wanted to hide the snow with blood on it, there was no need to remove that amount. That's true. He could have just scooped up just the snow that was stained with blood. Looks like there are some mysteries behind this issue. But I think this will help explain them. person did all that work alone, I just assumed it was a man. So you're saying that you never saw the killer, right? Yes. But earlier you very clearly stated that you saw a man behind your attacker. Nick, I'm sorry. The killer certainly went through a lot of trouble, moving the body by pendulum, manipulating the crime scene. But for what purpose? Why do all that? Maybe I know something that she's not letting on. Actually, the killer must have done it, right? Yes, I think so. The truth is, when I saw the crime scene, I felt something. You did? Yes. I felt like the killer was hiding the evidence from me, for my sake. But what, hiding it for you? Everyone knew that I was the only one at the inner temple that night. If Sister Bikini had come back and looked at the garden, she may have thought that you had done it. No, she definitely would have thought so. And you're saying that's why the killer cleaned up the crime scene to make it look like nothing had happened. Yes, I'm sure of it. Well, that's certainly an important piece of information. I want you to add that to the testimony. Yes, Your Honor. I think it was for my sake. They did it for your sake? Well, if the body and the blood hadn't been removed, I would have immediately been the prime suspect, right? Yes, I suppose that's true. Yeah, and if that had happened, the body would have caused some other problems, too. If her real identity had come out right then, it would have been terrible. Master Karain killed by her own daughter. I don't think Maya would have been able to handle it. But still, it's rather difficult to fathom the killer's motives. What reason is there to go through that much trouble to protect you? Okay, I was right. It is this. The body of Elise Dunan was carried all the way to Hazakura Temple courtyard. Then at the garden, the real scene of the crime. The snow that was suspected was covered in blood was scooped up and removed. It's reasonable to believe all this was done in an attempt to hide the true crime scene. However, there's still one matter that seems somewhat odd. Oh? And what would that be? You must have figured it out by now, Mr. Godot. It's the message written in blood on the lantern. It was written very clearly on the white stone lantern. Maya. If the killer sole motive was to protect Maya from suspicion, then why didn't they wipe the writing off the lantern? Because he couldn't see it, because he can't see red. That's why he cleaned up so much snow, because he didn't know where the blood was. Order, but Mr. Wright, isn't it the fact that the killer was trying to cover up the crime scene? Indeed, but it doesn't make much sense to move the body and remove the bloody snow and then not wipe off the most incriminating thing of all, the bloody writing. But if that's the case, do you have any explanation for the killer's mysterious behavior? Why would this killer move the body and remove all the snow, but then leave the bloody writing on the lantern? I don't know what the killer's plan was, but it's a fact that the killer left the writing on the lantern. There must be a reason for it. Well then, Mr. Wright, let's hear your opinion. Prosecutor Godot, early in this trial you gave me some good advice. Once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains must be the truth. Maybe you're not as dumb as I thought. The real killer wanted to disguise the fact that a crime had occurred there. If that's the case, they wouldn't have left the bloody writing on the stone lantern on purpose. Therefore, it must mean that they didn't notice it. But that doesn't make any sense. The torches were all lit and everything. There's no way any normal person would miss something as glaring as that. You're right. There's no way any normal person would. What are you trying to say, Mr. Wright? There's only one person involved in this incident who could have missed seeing the bloody writing together. And who would that be? Mr. Godot, this is what you said yesterday. My eyesight is pretty messed up. Even with these huge goggles on my head, I still can't see everything. You can't see everything? Is that correct, Mr. Godot? This lantern was submitted as evidence today. I would like the court to think back to the moment it was first presented. This lantern, there's something written on it. Why? It's written in blood. Nonsense. This lantern, it's as clean as a whistle. Mr. Godot, just admit it. There are certain colors you can't see, correct? You can't see red on a white background, can you? That's right. We went through this once before. during the poisoning case at Bien. This is the apron the delightful Miss Bird was wearing at the time. Someone spilled coffee on. There's something still bothering me, Mr. Godot. Why have you not explained the bloodstain to the court? Bloodstain? What bloodstain would that be? Don't play games, prosecutor. The blood-colored stain that smeared all over the apron. That's ridiculous. No one told me anything about a bloodstain. That makes more sense now. Back then, I thought that he just knew it was ketchup. You could see the coffee on the white apron, but you couldn't see the ketchup because it was red. Huh. It's strange. In the black and white photo, those letters would have appeared black to me. I wonder, why am I the only one that can't see them? So then, Mr. Godot, are you admitting it? Are you admitting that you can't see the red writing on the lantern? Hey, Gramps. Didn't you know? That's the reason why I don't drink red tea. I wasn't sure about it until now, but I just can't believe it. Prosecutor Godot is the murderer. But there's no going back now. I finally figured out the truth. Mr. Godot, the defense at this time formally accuses you. You are the murderer of the Miss Elise Dunim, also known as Miss Misty Fey. Hiccup. It's hard to believe this may be true, however. Once again, Mr. Wright has brought up a disquieting fact about you. Just make sure you don't fill out the indictment in red ink, Gramps. Come on. How does little graffiti make me into the killer? Besides, it's not like it's my name that's written there. I'm certain that the killer wasn't able to see the color red. Mrs. Rich, do go on, Wright. The answer is right there at the crime scene. In the snow. The snow? How so? Well, for example, why did the killer move all that snow? Your Honor, you said it yourself. If he wanted to hide the bloody snow, why not take out just that area? Yes, why didn't he take just that area? Oh, could it be? Yes, the killer couldn't see the red blood that had seeped into the snow. And so he had to remove all of the snow. He couldn't be sure of where the blood had landed, so he removed the whole area. Isn't it more likely that the killer couldn't see the blood because it was dark? Not a chance. The torches were all lit. He would have been able to see just fine. It seems that once again this trial has taken an unexpected turn, to say the least. Can you explain this, Mr. Godot? Wait just a minute. Maya, what is it, witness? Mr. Godot, isn't the killer? After all, he didn't even come to the Inner Temple until 2 days after the murder took place. He didn't show up until after that old bridge got fixed up. Objection. Maya, you can't testify to something like that. Why? What do you mean? I may not... After the murder happened, you didn't even exist. She didn't... I'm afraid I don't follow. Are you senile, old man? We established this just a little while ago. After the murder, this witness was unconscious for a long time. Because she was channeling Dahlia Hawthorne. Oh, that's right. Please, Your Honor, let me add to my testimony. Nick, please listen to me. Do you plan to cover for Godot no matter what the cost? If that's the case, then I've got no choice. Your Honor, let's hear her testimony. If it means we're going to hear the whole truth, I say we should not silence her. Nicely done, Wright. Very well, let's hear the witness's testimony. Please tell us what happened at the Inner Temple after the murder. Yes, sir. After I woke up, I began channeling, and my spirit left me, as it were. But little Pearlie was there at the Inner Temple, too. Pearlie was also stuck on the Inner Temple side that night. The next morning, she looked around but couldn't find anyone. The next day, when the bridge was finally fixed, she was in the spare prep room. That's when Mr. Godot arrived at the Inner Temple for the first time. He found Pearlie first and cheered her right up. Who is this Pearlie? That's my little cousin, Pearlie Fey. So when did you hear about this? Oh, just a while ago, when I was in the medical office. I'm terribly sorry, but what you heard from someone else is simply not admissible in testimony. What? What? Come on! Pearlie would never tell a lie. She's way more honest person than I'll ever be. Really smart, Maya. You always know the best thing to say when you're under oath. Huh. The prosecution has no objection. We believe the witness. Mr. Godot, let's just move on to the cross-examination if the defense has no objections. This is highly unusual, but, well, Mr. Wright, let's get this cross-examination started. After the incident. Pearl, so where did you think Pearl slept that night? In the spare prep room next to the training hall, I guess. There's a rule that you can't enter the training hall during the Acolyte's training. But even so, why did she go to the Inner Temple in the first place? It seems that Pearls became very worried about Maya. She knew that the spirit trampling I was about to undergo was very intense. Pearls was supposed to channel Dahlia Hawthorne, but she couldn't do it. That's why she headed to the Inner Temple. However, Dahlia Hawthorne was already there, possessing the body of Elise Dunim. The next morning, she looked around, blah blah. She searched the entire Inner Temple side, end to end. Well, you see, Pearlie gets pretty scared when she's alone. But there weren't that many places to look. She says that she even went back and forth several times. The Inner Temple side has two structures, the training hall and the spare prep room. And there's also a storage shack, I think. That's about it. There's a storage shack, too? Pearls was looking for other people, right? Would she have really examined a storage shack that carefully? Well, if it was me, that would have been the place I would investigate. So that means it's possible that someone may have been hiding in the storage shack. Pearls didn't hear the sound of them working on the bridge? What do you mean? I was just wondering why she would stay in the prep room. If it was me, I'd at least go out and wait at the foot of the bridge. Oh, well, Pearlie said that she was sleeping at the time. She said she was so scared during the night that she couldn't sleep much. Well, couldn't sleep well and woke up a bunch of times. Poor little girl. All alone like that. Well, we know that she at least had one friend in the Sacred Cavern, Dahlia Hawthorne, who was busy battling with the trick lock. She couldn't let anyone see her, so she wouldn't have shown herself to Pearls. What happened after the bridge was finally fixed? That's when Mr. Godot arrived at the Inner Temple. Blah, blah. So it was your first time at the Inner Temple side, Mr. Godot? That's funny. Am I imagining things, or did the defense ask me a question? Mr. Wright, please save your questions for the witness. What you heard from someone else is simply not admissible as testimony. Those are your words, Your Honor. Touché, Mr. Wright. Oh well. What do you have to say, Mr. Godot? Hot nights and even hotter coffee, that's what I always say. If it hadn't have been for this case, I never would have visited there. A freezing cold temple in the mountains, I think I'll pass. So we had never visited Hazakura Temple in the Inner Temple, huh? Huh. Want to say something, Trite? In any case, I had to find a crack in Godot's armor. Well, I cross-examined Maya, that is. Very well, please go on with your testimony. After fixing the bridge, the policeman came over to the Inner Temple side, right? Yes, then Mr. Godot. He found Pearlie first. He cheered her up. That's what Pearlie said. She said he was a very nice older gentleman. Thank you for looking after my cousin, Mr. Godot. And here I was thinking you were nothing more than a coffee addict. Cut it out, you're making me blush. This guy's really beginning to get on my nerves in more ways than one. The truth is there aren't that many places to look at the Inner Temple side. The policemen were all busy going over the garden with fine-tooth combs. So I decided to carry out investigation in my own way, Godot style. I'm the same way. I like to hand down verdicts in my own way, judge style. Maybe I should ask some questions, Phoenix style. So you cheered Pearls up? When I found that little girl? The first thing she asked about was her cousin, Maya Fey. Really? The bridge had burned down and she was huddled up in that tiny shack with no heat. Even though she must have had a truly terrifying night out there. She asked about you before she said a thing about herself. Pearlie. I noticed that you weren't anywhere on the Inner Temple side, but I couldn't find it in me to tell her that. So I gave her my last cup. With milk and sugar to hide the bitterness of the harsh truth. What a sweet story. He had a thermos of coffee? Why doesn't that surprise me? There's only one thing of any importance here. Where was Godot when the murder was taking place? He must have already been at the Inner Temple when it happened. Otherwise, he couldn't have killed Elise Dunim. You said that you conducted an investigation of your own. Did you find anything? It looks like my investigation went about as well as yours, Trite. After all, I did miss the bloody writing on the lantern. Well, I didn't miss it, so speak for yourself, Goggles. The only odd thing I discovered was the beauty in the training hall. Beauty? Misty Fey, naturally. Clad in her stunning Japanese garb, surrounded by the hue and aroma of Western tastes. Western taste? Could you find a stranger way to describe gravy? So from there, you headed for the prep room. Wait a sec. What did you go to? Yeah. I think I just found his proverbial weak spot, because she didn't do that until the morning. And he took it, I think. Let me save, because I'm probably going to get this wrong. So that was right, just the wrong one. Mr. Godot! The first time you crossed Dusky Bridge and went into the Inner Temple was long before the murder took place. Why did you say that? Because he just made one fatal slip-up. The hanging scroll in the training hall. Hanging scroll? But Mr. Godot was right! The scroll shows a picture of my mother! Maya, I know you know who it is, but there's something you didn't know. By the time the bridge had been repaired 2 days after the murder, the hanging scroll in the training hall looked like this. What's that wonderfully smelling, delicious smell? The morning after the crime, someone covered it with gravy. Gravy? But why gravy, Nick? Because gravy was much more than a condiment to the culprit. Well, Mr. Godot, if you really hadn't seen the hanging scroll until after the murder, you wouldn't have had any way of knowing that it was Misty Fey. Well, wait a minute, Nick! Yes? Then take another look at the hanging scroll! Look at the top! There's a crest there! Ah, that. It's the mark on the master, correct? Exactly! So if you know the meaning of the mark, then you could guess that there was a picture of Misty Fey in there. True, but Mr. Godot's described what was underneath like this. Clad in her stunning Japanese garb, surrounded by the hue and aroma of Western tastes. Oh! Yes, it's possible that he knew what the crest meant. However, he couldn't have known that she was wearing Japanese clothing. Mr. Godot, on the day of the murder, you were hiding at the Inner Temple long before the crime took place. Can I ask you just one little thing, Trite? What is it? This whole theory of yours, it all rests on a certain assumption. That I knew beforehand that a crime was going to be committed. That's right! Otherwise, there's no reason for him to sneak onto the crime scene. Of course Mr. Godot knew about the plan. Huh? What? What did you say? I'm gonna guess it's the burnt letter, but yeah, it is. Hey, smart. His crime was actually planned over a year ago. Morgan Fay authored the plan for her daughter's future, and these instructions were hidden somewhere in Fay Manor for a year. However, by the time Little Pearls found these instructions, they had already been unsealed. Unsealed? Yes. The killer had read these instructions long before Pearls ever found them. That's how he knew the crime was to take place at the Inner Temple. And you still insist that the crafty killer is me. You bet I do. But you just said that the instructions were hidden. That's right! Mr. Godot couldn't have known where the instructions were hidden. My throat hurts. If he really wanted to know, he had one great chance to find out. Yes, and when was that? During a visit. A visit? Morgan Fay told her daughter, Pearl, about where the instructions were hidden. During one of her visits to the detention center. That would be the only time for someone to have learned where they were hidden. Eavesdropping on a visit of the detention center? Yes, it could be arranged if you were someone with easy access in and out of there. Like, for example, a prosecutor such as Mr. Godot. Order, order, order. Mr. Godot, you're under fire again. This murder could not have been carried out without prior knowledge. And you were the only one that could acquire this information before the murder. Humans are afraid of the dark. And yet, At the same time, we're fascinated and bewitched by it. Maybe that's why humans drink the darkness that is coffee. Sorry for always asking, but what does that mean? It means there's a reason for everything. According to your theory, the killer in this case eavesdropped on a conversation during a jail visit where he learned of the hidden plan for a crime. After discovering the plans, he hid it in the inner temple and waited for the crime to occur. Then he ultimately took the person's life. And he did all of that just to protect this witness? That's right. If you're accusing me of this crime, I have to ask you, why would I do this? She is not a stranger to you. She is your ex-girlfriend's daughter. This girl is nothing but a stranger to me. I've got no reason to go through any kind of trouble to protect her. I am what you see. I'm certainly not the type to rescue the damsel in distress. The killer's behavior is certainly extreme, for lack of better words, even considering that the killer wanted to protect this witness's life. His behavior is still a little too unnatural. However, you had a good reason, didn't you, Mr. Godot? An unshakable reason that forced you to protect this witness at all costs? I knew it. You figured it out, haven't you, Nick? Maya. I guess you were doing your best to cover for Godot. For the same reason, huh? Okay, Wright, I'm all ears. Let's hear it. It's very simple. Maya Fey is a lot more than just a stranger to you. What is this? There's one person who lies at the very center of this whole story. One person that ties you to Maya Fey together inextricably. There's a very good reason for why Maya Fey's life is so precious to you. After all, she is Mia Fey's only sister. Mia Fey. You once worked alongside her. That was when you were a defense attorney. But wait a second here. Mr. Godot is a defense attorney? With your honor's piercing intellect, you must have figured it out by now. The real name of this man who calls him Godot. His real name is Diego Armando, isn't that right? The last time someone called me by that name was over 6 years ago. Diego Armando. That name rings a bell. It should, Your Honor. All of this is related to a single case. A case in which a convict named Terry Falls killed himself. Mia Fey's first time in court, the tragic outcome left a deep wound in her heart. She knew that behind it all was a heartless, scheming demoness in disguise. But in the end, Mia couldn't tear off that disguise. However, there was one man who reached out to help her. Diego Armando, a senior defense attorney at the office where Mia worked. It's my fault. It's my fault that Mr. Falls killed himself. Mia, you can't cry yet. The only time a lawyer can cry is when it's all over. I was moved by her. The way she put all her faith in her clients, that pure, sweet heart of hers. That's why I could never forgive Dahlia Hawthorne. Mia and I thoroughly investigated that fake kidnapping incident. Then one fateful day, Dahlia wanted to meet with me. It had been 6 months since the trial. We met in the courthouse cafeteria. Ah, I just remembered. 6 years ago, right here in this courthouse, you were poisoned. Even I didn't see it coming. Dahlia Hawthorne slipped some poison into my coffee. Some newspapers at the time called it a murder, but very little information about the case was released to the press. But you weren't dead at all. No official reports ever actually called it a murder. It was just in the deep, deep coma. I see. My body shut down and my life became nothing but a long, deep sleep. That woman's poison did a real number on my central nervous system. I lost my sight, and all of my hair turned white due to the damage it caused. That's terrible. Apparently it was a miracle that I ever regained consciousness. 5 years had passed since I drank that poisoned brew. Then one morning my eyes flew open from the smell of a doctor's cup of coffee. 5 years? You were asleep for 5 years? The worst possible news was waiting for me. Mia Fey was dead. In the very moment I opened my eyes, I had already lost everything I thought I had. The woman I loved had been murdered, and the woman I loathed had been sentenced to death. The woman you loathed? The woman who had spiked my scalding hot coffee, Dahlia Hawthorne. Good old Mia. She didn't let me down. She got her revenge before she checked out. In the end, there wasn't anyone waiting for me when I woke up. That's so sad. For someone like me, for someone who had slept away their best days, there were only 2 reasons left to live. And it was for those 2 reasons that I decided to become a prosecutor. If I may ask, what were your 2 reasons to live? The first was you, Wright. Huh? Me? If I hadn't drank that stupid poison, Mia Fey never would have died, much less the way she did. You were the only one who was there to protect her, but you let her die. It was all your fault. It wasn't like that. I wanted to see for myself what kind of man you really were. So that's why you became prosecutor. My other reason for living, she goes by the name of Mia Fey. You mean me? You were the only way I could make up for the sin of not saving Mia. 1 year ago, when the Karain village incident was resolved, it was obvious that Morgan Fey was planning something. Whatever her evil plan was, I was determined to stop it. My role as prosecutor put me in the perfect position to do something about her. That's how you overheard Pearl's visit with Morgan at the detention center. I knew that the time was drawing near. Since I knew the plan, I thought I could foil it. My goal was to outwit the plan. I thought if I could do that, I could keep that girl from being caught up in it. That makes sense. If Pearls had known that the actual purpose of the plan was to kill Maya, she never would have helped out. Finally, the day of the plan was drawing near. I contacted both of my accomplices. Accomplices? Iris of Hazakura Temple and Misty Fey. I especially needed the help of Iris. She was to take the fall in my backup plan in case we couldn't control Pearl Fey. But how did you contact my mother? She has been missing for almost 20 years. Officially, yes. What do you mean, officially? You've heard about it, haven't you? About the strong ties between the main family and the government? Now that you mention it. Bikini did say something to that effect. She said that the Master of Karain had great authority. Even without her official position, Misty Fey still wielded great influence. The police have been keeping an eye on her movements all of this time. That's how I was able to contact her. Again, because of my position as prosecutor. So my mother was cooperating with you? Don't ever forget, no matter how far away from you she was, she never stopped thinking about you. She was always... That's why I knew she would do anything to protect you. If you want to know how strong her resolve to protect you was, look at her staff. Her staff? The one with the sword in it? The day the plan was to be carried out arrived soon enough. We met for the first time at Hazakura Temple. That's when your mother showed me her special staff. I realized it then, just how far she was willing to go. She was ready to use that sword to protect you from Morgan Fey if necessary. Yes, even if it meant paying the ultimate price. Mother. Oh. That night, the night of the crime, there was just one way to stop Morgan's evil plan. You mean Pearls, don't you? We had to make sure she didn't channel Dahlia Hawthorne. Yeah. I wanted to go reading with her. We thought we could prevent it from playing her part in Morgan's plan, but she never showed up. She was worried and followed me to the inner temple. That was the thing we were most afraid of, and that's why Misty Fey had to do the channeling herself. She channeled Dahlia Hawthorne into her own body. What do you mean? If she channeled the spirit first, then Pearls wouldn't be able to do it herself. As Master of Karain, Misty Fey's power was supreme. That's how it went down. She channeled Dahlia Hawthorne so that Pearl Fey wouldn't be able to. What? Is this true? My role in the plan was to make sure no one was going to hurt Mia Fey. That's why I hid myself in the inner temple, just in case you needed to be saved from Dahlia Hawthorne. Godot. Anyway, that's all I'm going to admit to. It's right. Huh? There's no doubt about it. You're a great defense attorney, but you're going to have to do the rest yourself.